Hey, General Hospital fans, it's Radhika from Radhika, and we're going to talk about all the messy fallout from today on General Hospital. But first, please hit subscribe if you're not already following us. So, today on General Hospital, we saw one of those episodes where almost every single scene felt like it was setting up another disaster, and I mean that in the best soap way possible. We opened on Nina waking up in Jack's bed at the Metro Court, which, wow. Talk about a morning full of regret and panic. Jack comes out of the shower in a towel, all smug with the morning, sunshine, line, and Nina literally puts a pillow over her face, which honestly was the most relatable reaction in the whole episode. That is exactly the face of somebody replaying the previous night in real time and realizing, nope, this was not part of the original business plan. And once Nina gets herself together, takes a shower, and comes back to face the situation, the scene gets even better because now it's not just awkward, it's ugly. Jack brings her coffee, they both admit the night was unexpected, and for one quick second it almost feels like they might handle this like adults. But then Nina makes it clear she still cares about the real issue, which is finding the box, and Jack decides this is the moment to say she didn't need to sleep with him to get him to help her. Just awful. Just nasty. And honestly, very on brand for a man who keeps acting like he's the smartest person in every room and then wonders why women get fed up with him. Nina is appalled, and she should be. She tells him she is not in the habit of prostituting herself, and if he really thought she was playing him, then why did he go along with it? And his answer, that he wanted to see how far she'd take it, was just disgusting pig behavior. I mean, she says exactly that, and good for her. Then she throws Carly into it, saying no wonder Carly dumped him, which was such a sharp line because you know it hit where it hurts. Nina gets dressed in a huff. Jack backpedals, apologizes, says that isn't how he feels, says his defenses were up, and then admits what he should have said was that he enjoyed their evening. And because this is a soap, and because chemistry has terrible timing, Nina softens and admits she enjoyed it too. Then he asks if they should do it again sometime, and she leaves smiling. So, yes, everything is now more complicated than it was 10 minutes earlier. And that was just one thread. Over at the PCPD, Laura was helping Molly with Ezra, and this whole thing had a very desperate intern trying to outrun a federal-level mess energy. Molly has canceled her book tour to take on Sidwell's case, which already tells you how serious this is getting, and Laura is ready to help. They review what happened with Sunny and Lucas and the plan to expose Jens, and Laura agrees to testify. That part one liked, because Laura has been in this position so many times where she's trying to hold the town together while people around her are making terrible choices, and here she's at least doing something practical. Meanwhile, Ezra is out in the squad room, pacing like his soul is leaving his body. He tries to get Laura's attention through the interrogation room window, which is such a classic soap visual, all nerves and sweat, and please save me before I'm doomed. Joe is not in a saving mood, though. He shows up and basically says, no, the mayor cannot rescue you now. Let's start with why you were obviously helping Sidwell get to his safe house. Ezra tries the whole but I saved your life angle, which, sure, maybe, but that is not exactly a get-out-of-jail-free card. Laura and Molly come out. Ezra begs to speak to Laura, and once they're back in the room, he is basically in full panic mode, asking her to save him from arrest. Laura gives him the only sensible advice she can, which is tell the truth and say he was coerced. Ezra worries he'll still wind up in a cell next to Sidwell, which, honestly, fair concern. Laura tells him maybe he can strike a deal with the DA, but that means testifying against Sidwell. And then she actually brings Molly in so Ezra can try to work this out. Laura vouches for the fact that she believes Sidwell coerced him. Molly agrees to hear him out, and by the end of the episode they've reached a deal. Ezra walks out, Laura hugs him, and says she's proud of him. That was surprisingly warm considering he spent half the episode acting like a frightened raccoon in a blazer, but it worked. Now over at the Quartermains, the emotional weather was completely different, but still full of hidden sharp edges. Brooklyn and Chase are having breakfast, and she thanks him for not hating her for what she did to Willow. So right there, the guilt is still hanging in the air. And Chase, to his credit, seems committed to moving forward because they've agreed to focus on their family. Brooklyn even says from now on she only wants to focus on their family and then of course business calls, because this is Port Charles and no one ever gets to finish a peaceful breakfast. Willow then shows up at the stables with Scout, who has clearly gotten a noticeable refresh, and she brings Scout to Tracy, because Scout needs a favor. Willow leaves them alone, and Scout handles herself really well here. She knows Tracy doesn't like her father or Willow, but says Willow has always been good to her. Tracy, in one of those rare moments where her bark lowers just a little, tells Scout she's family and always welcome there. And then Scout reveals she wants to spend more time at the Quartermaines, which you immediately know is not the whole ask because Tracy can smell a catch from a mile away. While that's happening, Willow runs into Chase in the house and asks him to go with her to DC for a conference on police practices. She says she needs someone she can trust to help her navigate it, and wow, you could feel the emotional landmine under that conversation. Chase is flattered, but he says no, and honestly, good for him. For once, he actually draws a boundary. He says he and Brooklyn have decided to prioritize their family, and he needs to be there for her and Phoebe. He admits his focus has been split too much lately, and he needs to fix that. Willow understands, then asks if he would prefer she keep her distance, which is one of those quiet lines that says way more than the words themselves. Back in the stables, Brooklyn joins Tracy and Scout, and the real favor comes out. Scout wants to use the lake for open water swim practice because she's competing soon for charity. The money will go to breast cancer research in honor of Monica, which is genuinely sweet. Tracy, being Tracy, immediately asks what the catch is. Brooklyn says, "Why does there have to be a catch?" which made me laugh because with a Quartermaine there is always a catch, a subcatch, and a hidden clause. Scout finally admits the catch is that she wants her dad to be able to watch her swim. And that is where the scene quietly twists, because now this is not just about charity or nostalgia. It's about Drew being allowed on the estate. By the end, Tracy agrees he can come, but only to watch Scout swim, and Scout also gets them to agree to make a sponsorship donation. After she leaves, Tracy says Scout is definitely a Quartermaine, and honestly, yes, because that was a masterclass in getting exactly what she wanted. And then there was the Rocco mess, which is still one of the biggest loose ends floating around the show. Lulu meets with Rick and Sunny at Sunny's place and tells them Rocco could be in serious trouble because he was the one who shot Cullum. Just hearing Lulu say it out loud changes the whole energy because it means this is no longer just a family secret whispered in corners. She explains everything that happened on the pier. Rick asks why she's only telling them now, and she says more and more people are finding out, so eventually the authorities could hear about it. Sunny asks how bad it is, and Rick says only Jason and Cullum know the truth firsthand, and Britt only knows because Rocco told her, so legally, that's hearsay. Lulu says Dante is sure there's no evidence tying Rocco to the shooting, and Rick says as long as everyone stays quiet, Rocco is in the clear. Lulu cries with relief, and you could feel how badly she needed somebody to tell her this nightmare might not explode. But Lulu is not done. She thanks them, and then says she has another problem Sunny could help with, Valentine. Sunny immediately sympathizes because he doesn't want his daughter near Valentine either, and he says he's working on a way to get rid of the Cassadine. Which, if you're Valentine, is not exactly a comforting sentence to hear floating around off-screen. And, of course, that leads right into everything happening with Charlotte and Carly. Charlotte shows up at Carly's place with a rolling suitcase and asks if she can move in. That image alone says everything. She knows her dad isn't staying there, but she also says she can't stay with her mother. Carly tries to steer her toward working it out with Lulu, but Charlotte says her mom will only be happy if she cuts her dad out of her life, and if she's cutting anyone out, it'll be her mom. Brutal. Really brutal. Carly does her best here, and I actually liked these scenes because Carly was calmer than I expected. She tells Charlotte that rough patches with mothers don't last forever, talks about how much she fought with her own mom before that relationship became precious to her, and tries to give her some perspective. But Charlotte is in full loyalty mode. She says she will always choose her dad over her mom, and the only person who understands is Danny, except Danny is on a trip with his dad. Carly asks what she means, and then Charlotte drops the bomb that Jason is back. Carly checks her phone, sees nothing, and you can hear the disappointment even though she tries to hide it. Charlotte explains Danny said the WSB let Jason go. He showed up at the boathouse, and they took off on a road trip. Carly says it makes sense that Jason would focus on Danny first, which, yes, of course, but she is very clearly hurt that he did not call her. That was a nice little emotional beat because it wasn't loud, but it landed. And finally, we had Brick confronting Valentine at the basketball court, which was such a slick scene. Valentine is shooting hoops. Brick shows up joking that white men can't jump, gives him a few pointers, and then smoothly turns the whole thing into a warning. He tells Valentine he should take the gift the WSB gave him and move far away from Port Charles. He introduces himself. Valentine immediately knows he works for Sonny, and the threat becomes pretty clear. Brick says this is partly about Carly too, and if Valentine cares about Carly and his daughter, he should leave so they stay safe from him and his enemies. Valentine refuses. He says he can protect the people he cares about, and he isn't going anywhere. Brick warns him Sonny will just get more and more aggressive, and in the final beat Valentine says he is staying and building a life here. Brick tells him the game ain't over until it's over, which basically means no one in this town is done circling you yet. So let's talk about what all of this could mean, because honestly this episode was one giant setup for future disaster. First up, I suspect Nina and Jack are heading straight into the kind of partnership that only works until feelings, pride, and paranoia wreck it. And, to be fair, it may already be wrecked. The reason I say that is because both of them were telling the truth in pieces this morning, but not in a clean way. Nina really does want him focused on the box. Jack really does have his defenses up. Nina really was insulted by what he implied. And despite all that, they both admitted they enjoyed the night. That is not closure. That is fuel. So now if they keep working together, every conversation is going to have this extra charge under it, and that makes them both less careful. I'm betting Nina tells herself this was a one-time mistake, and then the next crisis pushes her right back toward him. And Jack, honestly, maybe even more vulnerable than he wants to admit, because men like him love pretending nothing gets under their skin right up until they start acting berserk when it does. Next, I could absolutely see this turning into a bigger emotional triangle even if Carly is not trying to be in one. Nina throwing Carly's name in Jack's face was not random. It never is. And then later in the episode, Carly is blindsided by Jason being back and not calling her. So now you've got Nina freshly entangled with Carly's ex, while Carly is dealing with feelings about another man who has always mattered to her. That is soap architecture right there. I'm not saying tomorrow we're getting some big catfight in the Metro court lobby, but I do wonder if the show is laying track for Nina to feel oddly triumphant for a minute, only for it to blow up once the box story gets more dangerous, or once Carly clocks that Jack and Nina have crossed a line. And if Jack has any lingering feelings about Carly at all, which I suspect he does, that only makes Nina more likely to feel used again. So, yes, this has disaster written all over it. Another possibility is that Ezra's deal is about to crack open something much bigger on the Sidwell front. Laura being proud of him is nice and all, but let's be real. The minute someone agrees to testify against a dangerous person, the countdown starts. Ezra can help the case, sure, but he also becomes a problem to anybody who wants Sidwell protected. I could see Ezra trying to clean himself up, act brave, maybe even thinking he's finally escaped this reign of terror, and then panic setting in when he realizes cooperating has consequences too. And Molly being the one to handle him could put her under pressure in a way she may not be fully ready for. She canceled her book tour, she stepped into the case, and now she's got an actual cooperator on the hook. That raises the stakes fast. My guess is Sidwell is not done pulling strings, and Ezra may find out that a plea deal is not the same thing as peace. And while we're on that thread, I wonder if Laura's role here becomes even more complicated. She's trying to serve the truth, help Molly, and steer Ezra toward doing the right thing, which all sounds noble and is noble. But in Port Charles, helping expose one villain usually means stepping into the blast zone of 3 more. Joe seemed relieved Ezra was cooperating, yes, but relief in this town never lasts. I'm betting Laura is about to get dragged deeper into whatever Sidwell has been building, and if there are any more hidden players connected to Jens or that safe house mess, this plea deal could be the first domino, not the last. Now, let's get into Chase and Willow because, honestly,